The dyes and pigments available in any particular period in which a specific color photographic process was invented, manufactured, and used have profound effects on the quality of color that defines most of the style in particular historical period. Cool room temperature inhibited cancer growth in mice. Mice acclimatized to temperatures of 4 degrees Celsius had significantly slower tumor growth and lived nearly twice as long compared with mice in rooms of 30 degrees Celsius because they were burning more brown fat. The problem is that increased immune vigilance has a side effect: allergies. Our speculation is that this is some kind of trade-off. In the past, you needed to resist some kind of pathogen, and the trade-off or sacrifice you have to make is increased responsiveness to non-pathogenic allergens. So next time some of you get the springtime sniffles, blame your distant ancestor, the one with the heavy brow ridge. As the inventor of alternating current technology, Nikola Tesla played a paramount role in the electricity used to power the entire world. Tesla also worked diligently on a dream of supplying electrical power without wires. Thomas Edison was also instrumental in shaping society today with his inventions. Edison's design of the inside of the light bulb was the crucial key to making a light that would stay lit for hours instead of going out almost immediately. Many people are under the impression that the water which comes out of a plant is clean. This is a common misconception. The function of a plant is to make the water cleaner, but it's not clean enough to drink. It could be used in irrigation. What a plant is trying to do is simply speed up a process that would naturally occur given more time. This means that a plant can create water that is safe to enter back into the water system as it's so heavily diluted. The river then continues the water purification, acting as a form of the fourth stage. If you do experience a motorcycle crash, be aware the other driver will most likely blame you for the accident. This includes the road conditions, any skid marks, road signs, construction, and anything else that may have contributed to the accident. Not every accident requires an attorney, but a knowledgeable local attorney can help you make sense of the process, as well as ensure that the other driver's insurance doesn't unfairly blame you for the accident. Intangible assets perform a number of distinctive functions in the life of each company. Firstly, they witness the prosperity of the firm and its good name. Such a position allows human resource management to employ professional workers and increase labor productivity. Moreover, intangible assets guarantee future value for the firm. And although it is difficult to destroy intangible assets, they can lose their importance in case of carelessness or business failure. Countries bordering the Mediterranean have built up a solid reputation for sunshine, great tasting food, as well as impressive health statistics, featuring some of the lowest rates of heart disease and increased life expectancy. This has created a lot of attention towards the Mediterranean diet, which is not a typical weight loss diet, but more of a set of habits. The executive residence in the White House in the United States of America, where the president resides, is divided into several wings. It also includes the vice president's and president's staff offices. This government building is a national heritage. This government building is a national heritage. Whether salamander, frog, or toad, amphibians are some of the most diverse and far-flung animals on the planet. However, they're disappearing, and experts are worried since frogs are considered bellwethers for the environment. Their double life makes them unique. It's through their skin that they breathe and drink water because their skin is so permeable. Japan is the world's calculator superpower. Japanese manufacturers have led sales of calculators for over 30 years in many countries. Even in the age of personal computers, calculators are still essential in accounting jobs. In addition, calculators with graphing capabilities have begun to be used in education. What produce these effects are familiar to neuroscientists: external light and dark signals that help set our daily or circadian rhythms, clock genes that act as internal timekeepers, and neurons that signal to one another through connections called synapses. But how these factors interact to freshen a brain once we do sleep has remained enigmatic. A dramatic fireworks display can be the highlight of a summer. It also can provide a feast for the senses. Bright colors delight the eye. Thunderous booms and whistles surprise the ear. If you're close to the show, you can feel the pressure waves that ripple from each exploding shell. And folks downwind of the action can smell the burnt gunpowder that fueled each rocket, and perhaps even taste it in the air. Electric vehicles have arrived. With technology led by Tesla, and all of the world's major car manufacturers following along behind, electric vehicles are now a common sight on the roads of most developed countries. Yet the situation in less developed countries is rather different. The only African country to have started the change to electric vehicles is South Africa. Neutron stars, the compressed remains of massive stars gone supernova, are the densest normal objects in the known universe. Black holes are technically denser, but far from normal. Just a single sugar cube worth of neutron star material would weigh 100 million tons here on Earth, or about the same as the entire human population. Based on the results from this study, we hypothesized that a high-protein diet coupled with low carbohydrate intake would be beneficial for prevention of bone loss in adults. The classic era of Mayan came to an end around 900 AD. Why this happened is unclear. The cities were probably over-farming the land, so that a period of drought led to famine. Recent geological research supports this, as there appears to have been a 200-year drought around this time. Symptoms of depression decrease with improvements in sense of smell, particularly among patients with dysosmia. New research published in the journal Scientific Reports highlights the intricate relationship between depression and sense of smell. The study found that participants' symptoms of depression dropped as their odor identification improved, particularly among those with an impaired sense of smell. Any writer must decide upon an order and a structure for a book in keeping with the reflexive nature of the work. There are strong currents of reiteration in the book, with each iteration developing understandings of research, theory, and practice as the story continues to unfold. Our major conclusion is that the current measure needs to be revised. It no longer provides an accurate picture of the differences in the extent of economic poverty among population groups or geographic areas of the country, nor an accurate picture of trends over time. Today's technological market is dominated by two contrasting business models, the generative and the non-generative. The generative models, the PCs, Windows, and Macs of this world, allow third parties to build upon and share through them. The non-generative model is more restricted. Appliances might work well, but the only entity that can change the way they operate is the vendor. Never before has the world of journalism been so explosive, so global, and so competitive. Forget hourly news flashes, we live in a world of 24-hour breaking news, with radio and TV stations and internet news sites updating stories by the minute. When buying a house, for example, it's best to let our unconscious mull over the many variables. But when we're picking stocks and shares, intuition often leads us astray. The trick is to determine when to lean on which part of the brain. And to do this, we need to think harder and smarter about how we think. Just about everyone on the planet wears at least one article of clothing made from cotton at some point during the day, inevitably. Byproducts of the plant show up as well in something that person is doing. The source of cotton's power is its nearly terrifying versatility and the durable creature comforts it provides. The preparation of abstracts is an intellectual effort requiring general familiarity with the subject. To bring out the salient points of an author's argument calls for skills and experience. Consequently, a considerable amount of qualified manpower that could be used to advantage in other ways must be diverted to the task of facilitating access to information. Most words have experienced several changes in meaning throughout their history, so that it is impossible to say which stage in their meaning is the true meaning. And if we attempt to go back to the beginning, we find it is impossible, for the origins of many words are difficult to trace back. So, as much as this is a book about the experience of traveling, the contemplation of cities that are vast in scale and villages that are as remote and strange as anything Westerners are ever likely to encounter, it is also a book that tries to describe another kind of journey. Much of what people do today disguises a desperate search for meaning, the result of the crisis of belief that has become a major problem of the Western world. On the one hand, the elites and their high culture suffer a loss of confidence, and aimless consumerism is widespread. On the other, powerful new myths arise, as with sporting heroes. Programming is the art of expressing solutions to problems so that a computer can execute those solutions. Much of the effort in programming is spent finding and refining solutions. Often, a problem is only fully understood through the process of programming a solution for it. The definition of a disaster varies by organization. Various entities have different pain thresholds that define when an incident becomes a disaster. A bank, for example, will have different criteria than a poison control hotline. With this fact in mind, any organization should begin the process of implementing first alert and response teams after it has completed a business impact analysis. Once you've picked a general topic for your paper, you need to come up with a thesis. Your thesis is the main and focal point of your paper, and it's the position you'll take on your particular topic. Formulating a strong thesis is one of the most important things you need to do to ace your paper. The shuttle was designed to be a space truck. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. We've done a tremendous number of different things with it. It's the most versatile space vehicle that has ever been built. We've used it to launch satellites. We've used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We've used it to capture satellites and bring them back to Earth for repair. While killing gorillas is already illegal in the country, declaring the subspecies as critically endangered would probably bring more funding and support for saving it. Protecting the entirety of the gorilla's 7,700 square miles territory would no doubt prove impossible, but Dr. Plumpter and his colleagues are talking with the government and community leaders about establishing 2 new protected areas that would encompass 60% of the remaining gorilla's habitat. When a virus invades your cells, it kicks your immune machinery into motion. The first responders are signaling proteins, called interferon. And they trigger downstream immune responses. So you can kind of think of them as the hormones of the immune system. They're triggered and then they stimulate a bunch of other immune responses that are more specific to that pathogen. Michelle Baker, a comparative immunologist at the Australian Animal Health Laboratory. Children need to discover their own strengths and weaknesses in order to find fulfillment as adults in both work and play. Watching television does not lead to these discoveries, it only limits children's involvement in those real-life activities that might offer their abilities a genuine testing ground. And young children's need for fantasy is gratified far better by their own make-believe activities than by the adult-made fantasies they are offered on television. Online speech has become such an influential way of experiencing politics today, not just participating in democratic processes like elections, but also the way we lead our daily democratic life through digital communication. If these sorts of irreverent and vitriolic exchanges are so prominent online, then we need to see how we can bring nuance to understanding them. Hydrogen will play several roles in our future. For transport, we now see several manufacturers launching cars powered by electricity produced in a hydrogen fuel cell, and this will happen even more in the near future. Fuel cell buses are also an attractive solution for public transport. Also, engineers are now even starting to consider using fuel cells and hydrogen to power trains. Desalination is the answer to long-term water security, but it's also expensive and energy-intensive. The good news is that scientists are developing some viable solutions. The first desalination plant in Europe was built in Spain nearly a half-century ago. Since then, facilities have sprung up in water-stressed regions throughout Europe. Studying how mouse brains process chemosignals will help researchers understand general principles of how their brains form social memories, and could help scientists identify what happens when these functions go wrong. Eventually, this may help scientists understand what happens in people whose ability to recognize others is impaired or those who have difficulties with social interactions caused by autism. A newly created form of carbon in a mesh just 1 atom thick is tantalizing scientists with hints that it could sharply improve rechargeable batteries and allow wires so small that they can operate at a scale where metals fail. The material is highly conductive and may prove able to store more electrical energy than even graphene, the astonishing atomic thickness carbon honeycomb material identified nearly 20 years ago. Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is a specialized technical institution of the African Union established to support public health initiatives of member states and strengthen the capacity of their public health institutions to detect, prevent, and respond quickly and effectively to disease threats. It supports African Union member states in providing coordinated and integrated solutions to the inadequacies in their public health infrastructure. A typical fence with a few wires allows most animals, such as lions or wild dogs, to go over, under, or through it. For larger mammals, such as elephants and giraffes, we will create large fence gaps that consist of a sloping, loose rock wall. Because of rhinos' short, stubby legs, they are unable to scale these rock piles. Lawmakers are pushing a plan to fight what they perceive as a threat to democracy: the sharp decline of local news coverage. The United States has lost 1/3 of its local newspapers in the past decade. Those that remain are operating with far fewer reporters than they used to, as more than half of total journalism jobs in the United States have disappeared over the same period. The benefits and disadvantages of globalization are the subject of ongoing debate. The downside to globalization can be seen in the increased risk for the transmission of diseases. Globalization has, of course, led to great good, too. Richer nations now can come to the aid of poorer nations in crisis. Increasing diversity in many countries has meant more opportunity to learn about and celebrate other cultures. Being able to understand and interpret facial expressions is a big part of nonverbal communication skills. There are often times in conversations when just listening to the words that someone is saying will only tell you half of the story. Words don't always match how we feel, and our facial expressions often have a habit of giving us away. Advanced Robotics is the International Journal of the Robotics Society of Japan and has a history of more than 33 years. It is an interdisciplinary journal which integrates publication of all aspects of research on robotics science and technology. Advanced Robotics publishes original research papers and survey papers from all over the world. Karl Marx is arguably the most famous political philosopher of all time, but he was also one of the great foreign correspondents of the 19th century. During his 11 years writing for the New York Tribune, their collaboration began in 1852. Marx tackled an abundance of topics, from issues of class and the state to world affairs. In multilingual countries, code mixing, the use of more than one variety in the same utterance or sentence, and code switching, the use of different languages or varieties between sentences, is common and natural. Despite its frequency, or perhaps because of it, some scholars and self-appointed guardians of linguistic morality view both code mixing and code switching as a sign of linguistic deficiency. Currently, integration is increasingly needed in the business environment. This need emerges from the efficiency and synergy requirements necessary in a complex and turbulent environment. In other words, integration is needed to facilitate coordination, which is again related to the building of competitive advantage. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room, in other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art.